Hi mathematicians, it's Miss Johnson. Today we're going to be looking at subtracting integers using a number line. We're going to start with what we already know about number lines and how to move on the number lines. We have 5 minus 3. We know 5 minus 3 is 2. And we know, if we think way back to elementary school when we first started looking at number lines, we know we just kind of like do bunny hops to get to the 5, and then we want to take away 3. So we would start at the 5 and then we would go backwards 1, 2, 3, or we would go to the left 3, and wherever we ended up at would be our answer. Well, in middle school, it looks almost exactly the same. So instead of the bunny hops, we just use a line that shows that distance. Okay, so that line is a positive 5 line. It's because it's going to the right. And then when we want to take away 3, we go back to the left. And when we know when we go to the left that that's a negative. And still where we end up at is our answer. We end up at the 2. So let's look to see if it stays the same when we look at when we start in the negatives. So if we start at negative 3, well, we always start our number line at 0. And we go back to negative 3. 1, 2, 3. So we're negative 3. And then we want to subtract 2. So if we're subtracting 2, do we go to the left or do we go to the right? Yeah, we keep going to the left, right? 1, 2. And where we end up at is our answer. We end up at negative 5. Sometimes it helps kids to think of the subtraction sign as less. So this one we're getting less positive. So if we're getting less positive, do we go to the right or to the left? Yeah, that means we're going away from the positives, right? So we're going to go to the left. Okay, so how that would look with lines, we would start at the 0. Make sure I remember our problem. So negative 3. And we want to subtract 2 more. And we want to get less positive. And then where we end up at is our answer. Negative 5. All right. The next question says 1 minus negative 2. 1 minus negative 2. 1 minus negative 2. So first we have to go to the 1. Now if we would normally, if we're subtracting, we're going to go to the left. But for this question, we're subtracting a negative. So it's going to be different. So if we think about this, subtract is less, negative, less negative. So if we want to get less negative, do we go to the right or do we go to the left if we want to get less negative? Yeah, we go to the right. If we want to get less negative, we have to go to the right. So we're going to go to the right 2 more. 1, 2, and that's going to end us up at 3. Some people also talk about that subtraction sign as the opposite of negative 2. So if we're going the opposite of negative 2, then we're going to go, so the opposite of negative 2 is a positive 2. So we would go to the right 2 times. Okay, so that minus and negative can get kind of confusing. So you got to pick which way it kind of makes sense in your head, right? Do you want to get less negative or do you want to think about it as the opposite of negative 2? So on our number line, it would look this way. So we go to the 1. And then if we want to get less negative by 2, so that means we're going to the right. Less negative means we're getting more positive. And we ended up at 3. So our answer is 3. I think I'm going to put that underneath here. Less negative is the same thing as more positive. If we're getting less negative, we are going to get more positive. Let's do one more together. So -2 minus -5, -2 minus -5. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to my -2. And then I'm going to think I'm getting less negative. So remember, if we're getting less negative, that means we're getting more positive. So instead of going to the left, we're going to go to the right. Or we could think of it as the subtraction sign as the opposite of -5. And the opposite of -5 is a +5. So we're going to get more positive. So less negative is more positive, or the opposite of -5 is a +5. So that means we're going to go to the right 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. My little bunny hops look funny. 5. And so we ended up at 3. So this answer is 3. We got the same answer both times. That was an accident. All right, so if we used our lines, right, it would be -2. And then less negative means more positive, so that means I'm going to go to the right 5 times. And I'm going to end up with the 3. Now this also lends us to this. We can also see our keep change switch in this. Okay, so we learned how to keep change switch to subtract. And so let's look how it fits. Okay, so it says we keep the first number, we change the subtract to add, and then we switch the second integer to the opposite. Okay, so I go back up here to the very first one that we did, the 5 minus 3. I'm going to rewrite it. And we said when we subtract integers, we can keep change switch, right? So keep change switch. So I keep the 5, I change the subtract to add, and I take the opposite. So the opposite of +3 is a -3. And if we look at this number line, we can very clearly see here that we have +5 and -3, and we combine them together to get the 2. Right? So we just follow the add rules once we get here. 5 positives and 3 negatives gives us 2. Okay, I'm going to rewrite the second question. I'm going to rewrite it over here since there's so much. It's so busy right there. Okay, so we're going to say -3 minus 2. So we're going to keep change switch. So when we do that, we keep the first integer, we change the subtract to add, and we take the opposite of a +2, which is a -2. And when you look at this number line, you can clearly see the -3 plus the -2. You can see it. It's right there on that number line. So -3 plus -2, that makes sense. Okay, it's clear on the number line. So that gives us a -5. Now, is it as clear when we have the minus a negative? So we have 1 minus -2. Remember, when we have the parentheses, right, when we have these parentheses, remember that's just telling us that that's just as a -2. Okay, we talked about that in the last video as well. Okay, so we have 1 minus -2. So we keep change switch. Keep change switch. I'm just going to rewrite it so I can have a second one to do. So I change subtract to add, and then I switch the -2 to a +2. And then we just have 1 plus 2, which we can clearly see that in our number line that that's going to be 1 plus 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3. And then one more. So -2 minus -5. Bet you already can see it. So I'm going to keep change switch. So I'm going to keep the first one, I'm going to change the subtract to add. I'm going to switch the -5 to a +5. And again, you can see we have a -2. We have the -2 here, and then the +5 here. And that gives us the answer of 3. Okay, so that keep, change, switch shortcut that we have can even be seen, almost can be seen even better on the number line than it can with the counters. Okay, so when you're subtracting your integers, you want to switch them to addition problems. You already know how to do the addition problems, so it's just gonna take practice for you. Okay, just practice, practice, practice. The hardest thing about this is to remember what to do when, and the best way to remember it is just to practice. So remember what I said before, go online, go find sites that they have tons of sites that you can play games on with integers, and just play. The more you play and the more the practice you get, the better off you're going to be. All right, have a great day.